What's going on, guys? It's Michael MGF, and today I am super excited to finally be doing my highly anticipated showcase video to celebrate tonight's release of Doctor Strange. And so for the minifigures in this showcase, of course, we've got Dr. Stephen Strange himself, Carl Mordo, the Ancient One, and Silius, all of which were made in the past 2 weeks. And I'm so relieved that I just barely finished on time. But I know you guys over in Europe and elsewhere in the world have probably already seen Doctor Strange, but if you could please be so kind as to just like not post spoilers down in the comments, that would be very much appreciated. Who am I kidding though? Half of the comments are probably going to be joking spoiler comments anyway. Yeah, I've been following this movie's production ever since it was announced, when they cast Benedict Cumberbatch as the Sorcerer Supreme, the filming, the post-production, just following it along until today. And I'm so excited to see how this movie's going to, integrate itself into the rest of the MCU, and it's going to be awesome. Hopefully this showcase is going to be awesome for you. And so without further ado, let's get started. Okay, so first up, of course, the man himself, Doctor Strange. God, where to start with this minifigure? So much to cover. I guess I'll just go ahead and say my quick little disclaimer that all four of the minifigures in this showcase, guys, are fully 100% hand-painted by me, excluding Mordo and the Ancient One's face. So, yeah, just wanted to get that out of the way. But the face, I guess we'll start there. The face on this minifigure, getting the likeness to Benedict Cumberbatch onto a minifig head is hard enough to begin with, fully painting that. So I did my best to portray his likeness, by positioning the eyebrows and little notches of black coming down from the eyes, different little details like that, but then, tack on the beard, and it's just me really trying to avoid making it look like classic Doctor Strange. I don't want to look like him from the comics, so I did my best to make him look like Benedict Cumberbatch here, and I think it definitely turned out really good. And, having the suggestion from you guys over on social media to add the cheekbones really brought it to the 100% that I think it needed to be. And then, as always planned for this minifigure, the Superman hairpiece, fully modified and sanded by myself, before painting the entire thing in dark brown, and then adding the light gray sideburns, iconic to his look in the film and just in general. So yeah, perfect hairpiece to use for any Doctor Strange minifigure. But now the Cloak of Levitation. So a lot of Cape Madness accessories that you'll see in this video, the first of which being Doctor Strange's collar here, and this is actually a one of the newer Cape Madness accessories, and this actually wraps around the minifigure torso post by use of 3 separate slots that are kind of joined together at the moment. But this entire thing is painted in my own red color, because I think at first I got it in like black or dark red or some other color before I painted it in red, to match the rest of the body here of the Cloak of Levitation. And you can see the like checkered pattern effects in the lines. These are all painted onto the fabric, and that's no easy task. Painting on the fabric and trying to keep straight lines, not an easy thing to do, but I think it really worked out here. The little pieces glued onto the top of the cape, they have their own little bit of tedious detail painted onto those as well. And so there's that, and I think the cloak turned out really cool. But just to put the head back on so that you feel a little bit comfortable looking at the minifigure and he's not just decapitated for the rest of the segment, we're going to talk about the Eye of Agamotto. And man, getting the Eye of Agamotto piece itself, right, carving it out of the same rubbery material that I use on like flash lightning bolts, among other things, pouches and other stuff, that was difficult, just to make it round and everything, and then painting all the detail onto that. But then the thread for the actual like necklace itself, dude, getting this to wrap around the minifigure neck and stay there was really a lot of pressure, because one slip up with glue and the whole thing is ruined. I got to start again. So I managed to glue the Eye of Agamotto piece onto the torso, which already had fabric glued onto that. Underneath all these straps, and the Eye of Agamotto itself is 2 big pieces of fabric that I painted individual lines onto. Just getting that fabric texture running on this minifigure was something I wanted to maintain. But then gluing the Eye of Agamotto piece onto that, and then the necklace on 3 separate places, mainly on the top of the torso though, here, and then on the back of the neck here, which you can kind of see. Nothing on the back of the torso, by the way. I decided not to do that because I'm going to be putting the cape over him at all times, obviously, and I didn't want whatever I put on the back to conflict with the Cloak of Levitation. But back to what I was saying here, I was was a lot of pressure with applying the necklace and the Eye of Agamotto piece, even once I got the entire thing glued together. And then, once that was all said and done, I painted the, all the detail that you see on it. And then the wrists, by the way, they have their own set of detail. The cuffs that I have running along, the entirety of the wrist, they do wrap around the entire arm on each. That was pretty tedious to do, and getting those right, and making sure those were as accurate as I could get them. This entire minifigure, man, God, definitely a real challenge. And you can see the little straps and buckles that I have around his waist. Those are actually three-dimensional, and those turned out really great, and they actually do wrap around to the sides as well with a little bit of sealant on those so that the arms don't ruin them. And so you can see that going on there in that whole package. But then the little pieces that I have glued onto the front of those straps, this little metal ring here and this little piece, before I painted those, I had to make sure I glued those on in the right position. I can speak. And I think I got them from like little pieces of like Michael's jewelry. Man, I took a couple trips to Michael's just to make sure I, got the little pieces that I knew I wanted to use on my minifigures and chop those off of other jewelry. So that was just a quick little fact there. But something to notice here, you can see the little like tassel that I have glued onto the waist cape. That's actually not connected to the little metallic ring that you see on the waist. If we split the minifigure in half here, you can see that the tassel is its own separate piece that does seem connected to the ring, but it's not. Only, because I did that mainly because I wanted to maintain the minifigure being able to, deconstruct. That's something I always try to maintain on my minifigures, is a classic, joints of the, of the Lego minifigure, and making sure that they can still split apart in all the ways they would have been able to originally. But you can see the waist cape is fully painted in my own dark blue, and the actual like little piece that I have underneath that is its own separate little piece. So I've got two little waist cape pieces like that wrap around the minifigure's legs, and come together to make for one cohesive like looking waist cape in general. So definitely not an easy thing to do either. And you can see the little straps that I have running around the legs and the shoes. Those turned out looking really good as well, and I have a little bit of actual like bright blue behind those straps. And so a lot going on with the Sorcerer Supreme, guys. He turned out looking really great. I'm really proud of this minifigure. Always wondered how I was going to approach it, how I was going to do this, and I think he turned out looking great. And right now I'm literally just stalling because I'm trying to reassemble the rest of this minifigure, and I'm considering doing a jump cut. I don't know. I guess we'll just put him together without the Cloak of Levitation to end off this segment. But yeah, guys, the Sorcerer Supreme himself, not an easy minifigure to make. I think he turned out looking great though, and it was a welcome challenge, and hopefully you guys, appreciate the end result as much as I do. Next up, Carl Mordo, played by Chiwetel Ejiofor, an amazing actor. And, on the topic of actors and likenesses, actually, that brings us to the face to start. And Lego nailed the likeness to Chiwetel Ejiofor in the Lego set. The design of this face is fantastic. And I said that in the review, and I said that I would absolutely be using it on my minifigure because it really is spot on, and I could not do any better trying to paint one. And so, of course, this does have the aggressive facial expression. If we go ahead and flip the face around, you can see that there, and you've probably already seen it before. And the fin hairpiece, of course, works excellent for Mordo here. And so there's that. And if we go ahead and just turn the head back around, because personally I favor this side of the face. But the torso, next up here, the torso, first off, I took an entire piece of Cape Madness fabric, painted the entire thing in dark green, and slapped that onto the front of the torso with a bunch of glue. The strap, however, on top of the the painted fabric, which by the way has all kinds of detail painted onto that fabric, and then 3D straps put on top of that fabric, along with all kinds of detail painted onto those straps, and then above the fabric and above the straps and above well, actually that's it. There is one other strap, and this strap, you can see, is pretty straightforward, and it just has a little bit of standard brown going along the rims of the strap there. So yeah, straps and fabric and straps and more fabric. You can see that the arms as well have a decent amount of detail, and this kind of similar cuffs to Doctor Strange, but not really. But similarly to Doctor Strange, at least they do wrap around all four sides. Why do I say all four sides? There are got 4 sides on a minifigure arm. God, I said that in other bloopers too. I'm not going to keep this as a blooper. We're going to keep rolling here. But that was pretty tedious to do, to get all the individual little, you know, brown lines and light gray lines, and, you know, get them to run specifically through different parts of the design. It's just not an easy thing to do, man. And then the little laces that wrap around the arm here as well. A little bit of detail on the top of the arm. And then also, to get it out of the way really quick, I did give Mordo his quarterstaff, which I think is also like the staff of the Living Tribunal, if I'm not mistaken. But it's definitely a pretty cool accessory, and it's not easy. I will say right now, it is not easy to paint a design that wraps around a round surface. I hate doing it. It's tedious. Everything is uneven no matter how hard you try, but I think I did a pretty good job, and I think it looks pretty close to Mordo's quarterstaff in the movie, and I'm pretty satisfied with it. But we're going to go ahead and remove it though, just to get it out of the way, so we can take a look at the rest of the minifigure and everything else I did here, and turning him around actually so you can see the back of the torso. Pretty reminiscent to what I did on the front. More pieces of fabric. I think right here there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different layers of fabric, and you know, the straps. And then also I want to point out I have these little individual pieces of thread glued onto the modified and painted Cape Madness waist cape, and you can see unlike what I did with Doctor Strange, where I took like a little like clump of pieces of thread and then I glued it on to make the tassel, I decided that was really hard. I'm gonna glue them all individually, and that ended up working out much better. And you can see I did that for the front of the waist cape here. All those little pieces of thread are individually glued on, and the same for the ones on the back. And so yeah, that was pretty insane. All these little lines painted onto the waist cape. And if we go ahead and remove the minifigure and just dismember him, you can see the legs are pretty straightforward and mostly just, you know, painted to accommodate for the waist cape. And so you can see, you know, fairly minimal detail, but enough to where when you put on the waist cape, it looks like he would have a pretty, you know, pretty much fully, you know, fully like solid set of detail underneath that waist cape. So yeah, don't really need to paint what you really can't see, right? And that's kind of the approach I took with all the fabric that kind of overlaps what would be a fully painted set of legs, for instance. And I think that is beneficial, you know, time-wise for me, and also just, you know, for the minifigure in general. But yeah, guys, that is my minifigure rendition of Chiwetel Ejiofor as Carl Mordo, or just Mordo, because I don't know what I'm talking about. Anyway, moving on. Next up, our third minifigure in the showcase, our expendable Marvel villain for our new hero's origin story, Silius. Dude, they got the guy who played Hannibal to play this character. I mean, it's like, is he just gonna try to eat Doctor Strange in the movie? I mean, why mess with the multiverse and dimensions when you can just eat the guy? I still don't know what I'm talking about. Anyway, making this figure was pretty insane, especially the face. And some of you doubted me that I would not be able to paint like his galactic, trippy ass looking eyes. And I think I pulled it off. I mean, I did my best to make some pretty insane looking cracks around his eyes and all their purple metallic glory. And there's some silver thrown in there too, but you know what I mean. It was a pretty insane face for me to make, and it was more so time consuming than it was challenging, but I still enjoyed doing it. He's got his little like red design on his forehead there. I did my best to paint that on the, you know, tedious tiny little scale that I had available, but I think that turned out pretty cool. I forget the name of the hairpiece I used, but I remember it was like in the Pirates of the Caribbean sets, in a couple minifigures on like Will Turner, and the other, like, you know, Jack Sparrow's sidekick, whose name I can never remember, but I used that hairpiece for Silius here. I think it's a perfect fit. It's got the ponytail and a pretty similar hairstyle, and I got the little bit of white hair kind of like weathered onto the top, you know, kind of more so off to the left side, just like how it is in the movie. And yeah, you can see I've got all the different little like gold bits that he has, like, you know, running through his hair in the movie, and I have those glued onto the back of the hairpiece in the form of these little, like, you know, square sort of like gold pieces, and I think those turned out really cool. I will say right now, by the way, the most challenging part about making this minifigure were these little pieces and gluing these little bastards on. Oh my god, did that suck. So there's that, and then of course, you guessed it, plenty of Cape Madness fabric on the front of the torso, and that's all fully painted, all the detail, everything you see. These sucked as well, painting these little tiny lines going around all you know, all the way from left to right here on the front. That wasn't fun, but I still managed to pull that off. The arms have all the detail and different straps running around the entirety of them, and so that's pretty cool, and there's really not much else to add with the arms, just a lot of lines and different colored lines. And then you also do have a little bit of detail running along the back here, not as much on the front, but a pretty decent amount of detail when it comes to the form of like how many layers there are on the back of his torso alone. You have probably 1, 2, 3 layers of fabric and different straps and other things. Even these little buttons that I glued onto the back before painting those, I made those out of some like Lego sprue pieces, you know, like plant sprue pieces, so that was pretty cool. And then if we split the minifigure in half and dismember this guy, you can see those laces that you've been staring at, that you've been waiting for me to mention. Those are glued onto the torso, and not a whole lot to talk about with them. It was, you know, pretty interesting gluing. I've never actually glued, you know, like permanently glued little bits of like thread onto a minifigure torso, but you know, you can see they turned out looking pretty good, man. And those obviously, you know, like rest over the waist cape and everything else. But let's talk about the legs, because there's plenty going on here. I did not know how I was going to do Silius's waist cape, but I figured it out eventually after staring at the Funko figure long enough. And if we go ahead and remove the main like body of the waist cape, you can see this entire thing cut up and painted, and little bits of additional fabric glued onto the side here, and plenty of detail and painting later, and it turned out pretty cool, man. And then you also have this little secondary piece similar to Doctor Strange beneath it, and if it'll come off and cooperate, you can see that it turned out pretty cool as well. It has its own little set of black lines. And then something else that I made literally overnight, I spent like I probably worked from like midnight to like 4 a.m. on these boots, and the boots and all their different individual buckles were pretty fun to make as well. And there's really not much, you know, for me to mention other than, you know, the design work was pretty tedious, getting the different shades of brown right and just coming up with the design as I went. And that's really the challenge of making a lot of minifigures, really, is just coming up with the design as you go. That can really be half the process. And again, like I was doing with Doctor Strange, I am just stalling as I reassemble the minifigure. There he is. There's Silius. I haven't seen the movie yet. We all know he's gonna die, but he's Mads Mikkelsen. I made him anyway. And finally, our last minifigure in the showcase, the Ancient One. Holy crap, was I cutting it close when finishing this minifigure. Literally, when I recorded the segments for the other 3 figures, I did not have the sleeves done on the Ancient One. That's how close I'm cutting it here. But just to get them out of the way first, the 2 accessories that I have for the Ancient One are the same mystical fans with the printed calligraphy on both sides from the official Lego set. And I don't know if there's any more detail to be had on these, and I don't want to go looking up any TV spots and potentially, you know, spoil scenes for myself. But Tilda Swinton did say that she does have these fans in the movie, and I saw them without the CGI in like a behind the scenes video. And I know Europeans already know what her fans look like, but I decided to avoid spoilers, you know, until us Americans see it. I would just go ahead and hold off and just leave them as they are, because they look awesome, especially with all that printed calligraphy on both sides. So yeah, now just removing those fans for right now so we can get a better look at the rest of the entire figure here. We can talk about the likeness to Tilda Swinton that Lego absolutely nailed in the Lego set, and so I decided I would leave the face exactly how it is. And however, there were these lines printed onto the sides, like here, here, and then all over the back here. So I took an eraser and just got all of that off, because it doesn't look like she has any sort of design work on her actual, like wrapping around her head in the movie. And I'm guessing Lego must have based it off of concept art or something. That's why I removed all of that for my minifigure here. But the face nails Tilda Swinton, and there really doesn't need to be anything done to it. I brightened up the pupils a little bit, but that's it. Anyway, so the one thing that makes this different from the other figures in the showcase is that I did actually sculpt the sleeves on her. So the only sculpted elements in this showcase are on the Ancient One here, and her sleeves are so pronounced and just like big in the movie that I had to do this, and that's definitely the right call, and it looks great on the minifigure. And so yeah, sculpted sleeves there. And then also you'll notice the torso, while it doesn't have the front of the torso anyway, doesn't have as many layers as like Doctor Strange or Mordo or Silius. There is still plenty going on here with all these different individual lines, but you can see this little bit on the front of her torso is raised. That's 3D, and then the same for like her, like this big strap that goes around her waist, and that does wrap around all 4 sides of the minifigure. But just to avoid, I don't want to remove these bigger pieces of fabric that I modified and trimmed and everything that I put on the side of her torso here. But you can kind of see it if I lift one up a little bit. You can kind of see how that like waist piece does wrap around the entire torso there. So yeah, there is that. And then taking a look at the back of the torso, by the way, you can see there are a lot more layers going on here, almost like 5 or 6 layers that I have on the back of the torso here, and that's made up of fabric as well, and all painted, of course, and that looks, you know, turned out pretty cool. And then on the back, you'll notice I do have these like little laces glued onto the back of the main waist cape, and that was something I knew I had to add, and that is accurate to her appearance in the movie. And then the waist cape itself on the front, you can see I have this little accessory on the corner of the the top of the waist cape, and I don't know what that is, but it is on her costume in the film, and so I decided that I would go ahead and paint that on. A little bit of metallic gold going on here, and then also these 2 laces that I have, like on you know, coming down underneath the main body of the waist cape. Those you know, all of that detail is fully painted, of course. All these patterns here, this like checker design here, and that definitely adds a lot to the minifigure. And then underneath, like all the waist capes and everything, I'm not going to really pull them off this time, guys, because it's pretty self-explanatory what they look like. These 2 pieces are separate, and then the waist cape comes off just like the rest of the minifigures you saw in the showcase. But yeah, I actually used some double molded legs underneath there, and those are like, you know, the same legs you would see on Batman, for instance. But because her waist capes pretty much cover up everything, I decided I'd just leave them blank because it's really not a focus of the costume. It's really everything else, and you can't see much of the legs at all to begin with, and so that's why I decided to do that. And yeah, then again, these larger pieces of fabric, those are all modified and trimmed, you know, to be attached to the sides of her torso. And yeah, guys, that is really it though for the Doctor Strange showcase and all of the minifigures that I made to celebrate the movie. Hopefully you've enjoyed this showcase thus far. It's definitely been a great time making these, and aside from that though, we're gonna go ahead and wrap up this video.
You are now the Sorcerer Supreme, and therefore it is your duty to safeguard the multiverse and reality itself. So, where will you go first, Doctor Strange? Hey! You're the guy that hit me and ruined my career!
Oh my god!
Alright guys, and there you go. That's it for the Doctor Strange showcase. Thank you so much for sticking around to the end. I really appreciate it. And if you enjoyed this showcase video, or maybe found yourself inspired to make your own characters from the movie, be sure to let me know by dropping this video a like below, and or your opinion on the minifigures down in the comments. Anything at all, guys. Your support really does go a long way, and it's seriously the only reason that I continue to pressure myself all year long to make minifigures for the things that I'm excited for. So yeah, with that said though, I do have to mention here, if you're interested, I do not sell my minifigures, unfortunately. These just take too much time to make, and you'd think, you know, 2 weeks, 4 minifigures, not too bad, but that was with me moving really quickly and spending most of my days working on these minifigures, and it's just not an easy task. These are seriously pieces of craftsmanship that takes a long time, and it's just not realistic for me to actually duplicate my work. And so it's just, that's unfortunately just how this is. It's just more of like a sharing inspirational type thing. And so however, I do have prints in the works. To those of you who might be interested in that sort of thing, I am working on getting prints made and hopefully getting that machine up and running, so I can at least offer you guys something. And so yeah, but if you want to follow me on social media, you can definitely check out my Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. By the way, links to all 3 of those are always down in the description below, and they're going to be posting all my preview photos, if I have the time, for Rogue One, because guys, this was the second to last project, big project for 2016, and after this, it's gonna be the full 10 minifigure showcase for Rogue One, if I can finish those figures on time. So wish me luck, and again, you can see it all over on my Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram long before it'll make it onto my channel when the movie comes out. So aside from that, there you go, guys. I'm gonna go out and see the movie, not in IMAX, because Asheville, North Carolina doesn't have IMAX theaters. So yeah, it's gonna be great, and I'll see you guys later. All right, bye-bye. A suggestion of you guys, maybe, you know, you guys suggested, shit, I can't do this all night, brain. Oh my god. This waist cape's here. On the lace cape, the lace cape, 4 sides, there's really aren't a full. Next up, I got Silius. Alright. Still eating some Halloween candy.
So what, we're supposed to save the multiverse by changing our universe's timeline and— Did someone say timeline? And multiverse? We're gonna have so much fun! And, you know, there's yellow paint on my finger, God. A like below, or I can speak, yep, okay. Don't go telling everyone that you can manipulate time either. Everyone always asks you to save their family or their parents. Okay, who's first? So, Uncle Ben. Oh my God. Wait, what the hell is that?
I'm Groot.
And your opinion on the comments, that's not really efficient.